3rd. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask, please, everyone to rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we have a special presentation given by Dr. Vincent Leone, Director of Programs and Policy, Blue Ribbon Schools, NYSED Inspires, and Graduation Plus.
Good evening to everyone, the Board of Education, everyone that's here, everyone that's tuned in and is listening. Welcome back. I hope hopefully everybody had a restful and rejuvenating Thanksgiving break. So our workshop tonight on Blue Ribbon Schools. So Blue Ribbon is a status that we are actively pursuing here in Brentwood. It is a federal distinction. So we're going to look at the history of the Blue Ribbon program and look at some ways that we can distinguish ourselves in Brentwood as having a Blue Ribbon school. We're going to look at the New York State Education Department's Inspires plan. And this is a plan that the State Education Department has said will transform education in the state of New York. It's hard to underestimate the impact that the changes that the State Education Department has published and the Board of Regents has approved lightning fast, really, for the next 5 years. Ms. Felix would like to talk about this district is going through a metamorphosis, and absolutely it is. And the State Education Department, when you look at New York Inspires and the state's vision for transforming education, also you can consider it to be a metamorphosis. This also gives us an opportunity to look at Graduation Plus, because the alignment between what the State Education Department envisions for the future of education and what Brentwood envisions for the future of education is incredibly well aligned. So you will see that we are positioned extraordinarily well for our youngsters to be successful in this new NYSED Inspires plan. We'll start with the history of the National Blue Ribbon Program, which started in 1982 and was designed to recognize public and private elementary, middle, and high schools that demonstrate exceptional academic achievement or significant progress in closing achievement gaps among student subgroups. In the early years, 1982 to 1988, the program initially focused on identifying and recognizing outstanding schools across the nation to highlight best practices in education. The program celebrated schools that demonstrated excellence in teaching, learning, strong leadership, community involvement, and innovation. From 1988 to 2002, there was some refinement and focus of the program. Over the years, the criteria for selection shifted to emphasize measurable outcomes such as test scores, graduation rates, while maintaining a focus on equity and leadership. The program began incorporating feedback from educators and policymakers to better align with evolving educational priorities during this time. In 2015, from 2002 to 2015, there was a shift in focus for the Blue Ribbon program. So No Child Left Behind redefined the program so it wouldn't only be focused on high-performing schools, but also schools that were exemplary at closing achievement gaps between the all students group and other subgroups of students, which would include but not be limited to subgroups based on race and ethnicity. The program during this time became more data-driven, relying on standardized test scores and other metrics to determine eligibility. Under ESSA, the current law of the land, the program retains its focus on high performance and closing achievement gaps, but allows states more flexibility in defining accountability measures. Recognition continues to be based on state-nominated schools, with the USDE making final blue ribbon selections. Key features of the Blue Ribbon Program. Public schools are nominated by state education departments, while private schools are nominated by the Council for American Private Education. Annually, up to 420 schools may be nominated for the award. Schools receive a plaque and a flag symbolizing their status as a Blue Ribbon school, a mark of excellence recognized nationally. Eligibility in New York. The USDE Secretary of Education sends a letter of invitation to chief state school officers and CAPE requesting nominations for eligible schools. In January, applications are submitted via portal by each state. The New York State Education Department identifies potential nominees based on the criteria set forth by the USDE. Those include high-performing schools and schools who show excellence closing achievement gaps between the all students group and other subgroups. Public schools must have been in operation for at least 5 years, meet state accountability standards, perform in the top tier of the state testing results, or show strong progress in reducing achievement gaps, have a high graduation rate, and meet federal guidelines, including at least 95% in state test participation. The USDE mandates that at least 1/3 of nominated schools in each state must have a population where 40% or more of students are from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. Implications, equity and nomination. This requirement ensures that schools serving economically disadvantaged communities have equitable opportunities for recognition, not just those with higher overall academic achievement. And focused selection. New York must carefully identify schools that meet this threshold and demonstrate outstanding performance in closing achievement gaps or achieving high performance despite the challenges associated with serving economically disadvantaged populations. Pursuit of Blue Ribbon status. Brentwood UFSD strengths that could support Blue Ribbon nominations include a focus on equity and inclusion, something that's prioritized by the United States Department of Education. We believe deeply in serving our diverse population with innovative programs for English learners, immigrant support, and inclusive curriculum design. Cultural and community support, strong ties to the community, and programs that support student and family engagement may serve as a model for other districts. And finally, grant participation. Initiatives like the OTDA Refugee and Immigrant Student Welcome Program grant highlight the district's commitment to addressing the unique needs of students. A potential Blue Ribbon school in Brentwood includes, but is not limited to, Brentwood High School. We use that example here this evening. Brentwood High School's graduation rate climbs from an 11-year average of 76% to 84% in 2023-24. That is a meteoric rise in graduation rate. The high school is one of 23 schools selected by the New York State Education Department for their planned pilot program. That is part of the Blue Ribbon Commission's prestigious graduation measures and New York Inspires, what we'll hear about in a moment, initiatives to reimagine education in the state. So the fact that the high school is one of 23 schools that were selected to participate in this program is really remarkable and one that distinguishes that school within New York State. Cultural inclusion, emphasis on culturally responsive pedagogy, including programs like AP Spanish, language, and literature. This is a map of the 23 planned pilot schools across New York State. There is little old Brentwood, highlighted with an arrow. And the goal of the planned pilot program is to facilitate sustainable change in school culture. Schools participating in the pilot will work together in networks to learn and support each other in successfully implementing performance-based learning and assessment practices. That's going to be key and critical for the New York State Education Department to understand how to scale a process or a system for the replacement of Regents exams, which is coming very soon, which we will talk about in the next part of this presentation. Next steps, we're going to review our data. We're going to look for schools demonstrating high performance or significant progress in student achievement, where gaps are being closed. We're going to work closely with the State Education Department to help us identify schools that may qualify best for Blue Ribbon status. We're going to contact successful Blue Ribbon schools that have similar demographics as we have in Brentwood. Union City, New Jersey, and Yonkers are two of those. And we're going to use those processes in our pursuit of Blue Ribbon status here in Brentwood. We know that we have some of the best schools in the state, in this school district, and it's time that everybody else knows that we have some of the best schools in the state, in the school district. So that's a little history on Blue Ribbon, process for identification, our plans to pursue Blue Ribbon status. Does anyone have any questions?
You answered them before I asked them, so.
Okay. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And we will keep the board and the community apprised of our progress in this regard. Impact of becoming a Blue Ribbon school. The Blue Ribbon Schools program serves as a powerful symbol of educational excellence. Recognized schools often become models for best practices and are celebrated for fostering a culture of achievement and inclusion. Sounds like Brentwood to me. So the next part of this presentation comes from New York Inspires, which was a plan that the Board of Regents approved in November. And it is a plan, and this is from State Ed title slide to that presentation, to transform education in New York State, and to do so in an extraordinarily quick, fast manner. It is a seismic shift. And Vincent Tedisco made me promise to mention that this was a seismic shift. And what is coming for education is staggering. Really, for the past 80 years, school districts across the country have been, in order for our students to demonstrate mastery, they've had to pass standardized exams for the past 80 years. And what the state is asking everybody to do, essentially in 5 years, is to pivot away from standardized tests as we know them and completely. So it's hard to overestimate the significance of these changes. So what is the plan? It is an overview of proposed transformations for New York State's education system. There are 4 of those transformations. The goal here is to equip students with skills to thrive in a complex, interconnected world. This is State Education Department acknowledgement that the current system that has been in place has been insufficient to equip students to be successful in the world in which we live. So the State Education Department is changing the system. 4 transformation summary. The first is to adopt the New York State Portrait of a Graduate. We'll see those, all of those on the next slide. Those competencies emphasize skills like critical thinking and collaboration. Transformation number 2, redefine credits and learning experiences, introduce flexible, personalized pathways. Sound familiar? Sunset diploma assessment requirements. Sunset diploma assessment requirements. Read that again. Transition away from standardized assessments. Move to one New York State high school diploma. Currently, there are 3, which will ensure, as per the State Education Department, equity and inclusivity for all students. These are the profile of a graduate competencies. These competencies align extraordinarily well with the outcomes that have been conceived in the conceptual framework for Graduation Plus here in Brentwood. So essentially, this is what the State Education Department has identified, and in Brentwood, we would agree with them, the skills and competencies that students are going to need to be successful in the world in which we now live: critical thinking, innovative problem solving, literate across content areas, cultural competence, social emotional competence, effective communicator, and global citizen. One of the things that you'll see on subsequent slides is students are going to have to demonstrate mastery in these competencies. So the standards and also these competencies, that's where the planned pilot program comes in. Brentwood High School is an integral part of that, 23 schools. The facilitation of performance-based learning and assessment systems and scaling across the state a standardized process by which students can demonstrate competencies in these areas without a standardized exam. So incredible work taking place at the high school, something we should all be very, very proud of. So here is the first transformation: adopt a New York State portrait of a graduate. In the presentation to the Board of Regents, there were challenges and opportunities that were presented. I want to focus your attention on the opportunities. When I do that, I'm going to show you or illustrate the alignment between those opportunities that the State Education Department has identified and our conceptual framework of Graduation Plus. It's almost as if the State Education Department is a little bird on Wanda's shoulder as she was conceiving the conceptual framework of Graduation Plus over the last 2 years. Opportunities: increase flexibility and student choice. So here is our conceptual framework for Graduation Plus. So if we go back, increase flexibility and student choice, that first bullet under opportunities. If we look at the first bullet under success pathways, each child's plus, we believe, will be reflective of his or her strengths, preferences, and interests. Multiple pathways to graduation, second bullet. If we look up in the vision statement itself, individual success pathways will be aligned to student strengths, preferences, and interests, equipping them to lead productive, meaningful, and joyful lives. Third bullet, holistic, well-rounded education. If we look under meaningful and relevant instruction and assessment, we believe that a well-rounded education will include foundations of literacy, numeracy, physical education, and the arts. Real-world career readiness. If we look at, again, under meaningful and relevant instruction and assessment, and cultivating relevancy through project and problem-based learning and assessment opportunities with real-world application. And finally, equitable inclusive system, when we look under empowered stakeholders, that everyone is entitled to a safe, healthy, caring, and culturally responsive environment that fosters equity, dignity, and belonging. That is lockstep alignment with our conceptual framework of Graduation Plus. The second transformation, redefine credits and learning experiences. If you look at opportunities and learning experiences from the Board of Regents presentation, personalized learning pathways, increased student engagement, real-world application, equitable access to education, flexible credit attainment, learning experiences, internships, and work-based learning is prioritized, capstone projects, portfolios, community service, project-based learning, just highlighted in blue, all the ways and all the areas where our conceptual framework for Graduation Plus align. Third, transformation, sunsetting diploma assessment requirements. No more assessment requirements. Opportunity supports all students. Multiple pathways for students to demonstrate proficiency. Emphasis on skills, real-world readiness, reduction of test-related stress and anxiety. We've highlighted here, under growth culture, the alignment to those ideas. Moving to one diploma, this is the final transformation. Again, the opportunities, equity and inclusion, increased access to postgraduate opportunities, reduce student stress and personalized learning. So that is the entire framework. So there is significant alignment between the direction the New York State Education Department is going and our conceptual framework for Graduation Plus. So while these transformations are seismic, again, our district is extraordinarily well positioned to address the challenges that lay before us. This is a diploma requirements by cohort timeline. And if you notice, this began with the cohort from 2023. So students who were in 9th grade last year. So current diploma requirements will stand. There will be 3 diplomas for those students, the local, the regents, or regents with distinction. Interesting addition here is students may request an exemption due to major life events. That can include, God for goodness, whether it's a death in the family, a big move, a move from a country. So that is new, with this plan. And as recently as our current cohort of 9th grade students, 2024, those students will only earn 1 diploma. Advanced designation will be available as a seal of distinction. Current credit requirements stand, and diploma assessment requirements will be decoupled by the fall of 2027. That is a lightning fast. When you think about right now, our students have to pass as many as 5 Regents exams. It's 2024. By 2027, in school time, that's lightning fast. There will be no more requirements for students to pass Regents exams in New York. Remarkable transformation. And then in 2029, cohort 2029 and beyond, there'll be 1 diploma, redefined seals and endorsements, including advanced distinction. There'll be a statewide transcript required, and proficiency in both the learning standards and the portrait of a graduate competencies will be required. This is just another timeline. It is horizontal as opposed to vertical, but pretty much says the same thing. So the bottom line here is, with New York Inspires, it's stunning for someone who's been in education as long as I have, to see the changes that the New York State Education Department has adopted in terms of what's going to be required for student graduation. We welcome the challenges here in Brentwood, giving our students opportunity to pursue their strengths, their passions and interests, to demonstrate their mastery through multiple means and mediums, through project-based learning opportunities, opportunities for kids to go into our community, Brentwood, make it better, to improve it as part of their experience in high school, to obtain certification, licensure while they're here in areas that they're interested in, to improve not only our community and the world. This is something we felt deeply about for a very long time, and it's wonderful to see the State Education Department propose these changes. There'll be challenges, of course, with it, but we feel like we're extraordinarily well positioned to meet the challenges, and it's mostly based on the values and dispositions of this Board of Education, of course, our superintendent, the cabinet, our staff, everyone. So stunning, and we're excited because we are poised to do some really, really great work here. I'm happy to open it up to any questions folks may have.
I got one. So some parents have asked, with this Regents going away, or at least the requirement, is it the requirement, or is the test still available if some parents like the Regents exam for their child, that they like those assessments? Is that still an option for them, or is it bye-bye for good?
It does not appear, Brandon, that Regents exams, standardized assessments for students to graduate high school beyond 2027 is going to be required or an option in New York. That is my read of it. So there will be other assessments that are associated with how students demonstrate their competencies. So students will still have to, let us make no mistake, literacy, numeracy, understanding how to read, understanding how to write, understanding how to apply, those skills are going to be, and some folks would say, well, my goodness, it sounds like, we're lowering standards or lowering the bar. In fact, it's quite different. The bar is really being raised. So the necessity for kids to really develop their literacy skills, numeracy skills, so they could apply them in different ways, project-based learning assessments, different ways to demonstrate proficiency, it's going to be greater, not less than. So the rigor for what we're doing here is heightened and beyond.
And that you covered my follow-up, so that was well thought through. But I appreciate that, because that was a concern, and I've tried explaining it, but sometimes I don't fully understand it. So I'm glad you're presenting it. But they would ask, oh, so are they not being assessed anymore? And I'm like, no, I don't think that's the point. I think it's just maybe that doesn't work for everybody, and I think that's how we're kind of moving forward. So I'm glad you elaborated on it so that I could share that clip, make sure people see the Dr. Leone here give that example. So I appreciate that.
Sure. And there'll still be a multitude of different types of assessments. Teacher-created assessments in their classrooms, unit tests, that we traditionally have. So through various means and mediums, students will always be assessed. There's just going to be a lot more variation in how students can explore and display mastery.
Right. More than a test score.
More than a test
That's
score.
right.
Absolutely correct.
Thank you, Vincent. This has definitely, you always provide us with excellent information, to the community and also to the entire staff here in Brentwood. One of the things that I want to say is, we use the word metamorphosis, and the state is using now transformation. It is the same thing. So they are going through a transformation that we are going through metamorphosis right now, right? One thing that I like to say is that this roadmap actually aligns to our vision, as you mentioned, right? So it is great to see that the work that we're doing is the work that they're also working on. And one of the things that we did was we sent a letter to Betty Rosa. And I would love for her to see this workshop right now and to come. We really want to see her, because our vision is her vision. And we would love to have her here seeing all the great things that we're doing. And besides that, Vincent, thank you, because you really inspire us. The way that you speak, the way that you're really committed to our district is really inspirational, right? Every time that he presents something, motivates us to work harder. Would you be able to speak just for 2 minutes about the report that we have to send to the state in terms of the regionalization that we have to do? The board would like to know that.
Sure. So regionalization, what the State Education Department has said is that regionalization is not reorganization, right? So that's the key message. So a lot of people are concerned that when they hear regionalization, the first thing that comes to mind is reorganization. Does that mean we're going to have to collapse school districts? Does that mean we're going to have to combine school boards? Does that mean we're going to have to share teachers and programs? And the State Education Department is saying emphatically, no, that's not the case. There was recently a memo that was released. So I guess we first got notification, Stacy knows this, maybe a couple of months ago. We were charged with putting together a great deal of information, holy smokes, for the State Education Department, going back 10 years in every school district in New York. with the exception of the big 5 city school districts, were charged with doing this. And the ideas would go to Eastern Suffolk BOCES, a district superintendent of all BOCES, to look for patterns and trends. And school districts were compelled to do it, and there was opposition, right, that was raised to the state education department. Boards of education, superintendents raised objections about the mandatory nature of this discussion. State Ed was calling it a discussion, and has since released a memo, it's no longer required for school districts to participate in this discussion. So now if we do so, we will do so voluntarily. So that's the idea. The state education department is suggesting that the conversation will serve all students in that it's an opportunity to share resources similar to the way that school districts contract with the BOCES for transportation to lower costs. So the overarching goal from state ed is to make sure that every child in the state, has access to a great education. And this is a way that they feel like, that they can do it or could do so. Personally, my own kind of editorial, I know I've said this to Wanda, I just don't know if the conversations would actually, so will it reach the goal? Would these processes, and they're in 10-year increments. So there's a report that's developed now, and there's not another one for 10 years. So this is obviously would be a slow process, probably long after I'm gone. If we could look out at a crystal ball and say, wow, this really helped kids, in Brentwood and everywhere else, I think we'd all sign up for it. But there just is there's no way of knowing. There's really no way of guaranteeing, if it would in fact help children and help communities and help families in the way that the state education department hopes.
It's a vision at this time for them too. So they're just collecting the data, and once they have that data, they are going to begin to create a plan. So they don't have a plan yet.
Or maybe not for another 10 years.
That is correct. This is the first stage this year, collecting data, and a plan has to be developed in 10 years. They will take 10 years to develop and publish a plan for those districts that commit to the conversation and to the work. And that's something for.
I think there's a lot of positives that could come from the regionalization. We might be able to function a little more like New York City does when it comes to the high school level, that students can really select a specialized high school and pursue their interests or their areas that they're most proficient in. So I think it's a work in progress, and there is a lot of good that can come from it. So as a board member, I would welcome it and I commit to the work. So we do have a question from the audience at home.
Sure.
Johnson sent this in. It's not about the regionalization, it's about your presentation. And I think not just you, Vincent, but maybe some of the other staff here could answer it. It says, what will be implemented for curriculum development to standardize the transformative learning process for student and guide the teachers for educating a diverse learning environment? Do you want me to read it again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What will be implemented for curriculum development to standardize the transformative learning process for students and guide the teachers for educating a diverse learning environment? So, I guess translation, right? What are we going to?
So I'm hearing standardized curriculum. So someone's wondering about
Well,
standardized curriculum to support diverse population.
I think the gist of it is if we don't have standardized tests, how will we guarantee that there's going to still be a certain level that will be maintained?
Sure. Well, that's a fantastic analysis of that question.
Him at home, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
So this is exactly the state education department's real challenge here, is if we're eliminating standardized tests, how are we going to standardize what the state's prioritizing as project-based and performance-based learning and assessment opportunities, so the state's challenge is, how do we standardize that? How do we ensure that one child's experience in Brentwood High School is similar to a child's experience in Bayport Blue Point High School and all the way across the state? That's where the planned pilot comes in, and that's where those 23 schools that are participating in that pilot, so right now, those 23 schools are having their students engage in project and performance-based learning and assessment opportunities, experiences. We are developing rubrics for those experiences. And one of the key features of that pilot is variation. So we have the largest suburban high school in the state, Brentwood High School, little old Brentwood, and we have schools in the pilot of the 23 that have 100 students. So what works in a tiny little school with 100 students and what works in a school with 5,000 students, and how do we learn from that variation? So essentially, it's going to be done through the establishment of rubrics for project and performance-based learning experiences. Brentwood High School is at the forefront, of that process as one of these 23 pilot schools. So that's primarily the answer that the state is giving, and that I would suggest as well. So that's really the answer.
And I think also that it will be guided by the portrait of a graduate. What are the expectations, right? And it will have to be guided through that, because I believe that those are going to become our standards as well. So it doesn't mean that we don't have it.
I'm really a fan of the project-based learning.
Sure.
I think it makes education more relevant for students. They can really engage in projects that they're a little more excited about. There's less stress as far as the testing stress.
Sure.
And it just kind of opens up the doors for them to become more engaged in
Sure.
education. So I hope that that becomes a big part of what education looks like moving
And
forward.
one of the key elements, facets of performance-based learning and assessment, and the high school is one of the pilot schools is doing this right now, is you're creating rubrics, not just for the product. So here's what the student created, here's what the students did, whether it's a relationship, a partnership, a business, an entrepreneur, something that they built physically with their hands. The end product, there are rubrics that are created for the process. What process are students using to get to the final product, and standardize that? What questions were developed, what resources were used, what research was done, what trial, what error, was implemented for students to learn, get to the end product. So that process, which has for a very long time in education been marginalized, not ignored, but marginalized, now really comes to the forefront. And that's really going to help children think about, become problem solvers, become innovators, become critical thinkers, culturally aware and competent. So that's a key element of it. And one of the ways, the question was an excellent one, how we'll standardize, what it is students are doing to graduate.
Vincent, and when no one really believed from PBL, someone who brought it here, sitting right there, Miss Palmer, I think it was 7 years ago, right, Annie?
Reimagining the classroom.
Yes, she did, And we were in the newspaper today.
Yes.
That was part of
Yes.
this as well, right? So, yes.
It goes to
Very nice.
playing, yeah, it goes to playing on the strengths of an individual, right? The end goal is what we're all striving to get to, right? But everyone has a different way of getting there.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily make it wrong, it's just the way you get there.
I've been saying for many years that kids should learn based on what they read and what they experience versus what people tell them, right? So
Yeah.
it's about getting kids to engage in real world application, getting them to read about it, write about it, speak about it, and engage in the process.
I think from an equity perspective also, this will really go a long way towards making sure that all children are able to achieve, and work at a level that's more comfortable for them, yet, have progress at
Right.
the same time. So I'm looking forward to
Absolutely.
that as well.
It's not a race to get there, right? The learning is in
Correct.
the process on how to get there, as opposed to just the end result, taking the test and getting the score.
I think there's different kinds of reading, we're not saying that we're not going to have kids read anymore.
Oh, not at all.
But if you're a plumber,
They might read more.
reading manuals,
Right.
The kinds of reading that you're going to do to
Right.
pass HVAC tests.
Right,
is
blueprints.
different from the
Right.
kinds of reading that you might do to become a
Right.
teacher of literature, right?
Right.
So we're not saying that we don't want professors and teachers of literature, and I think that's what's frightening people. I think that we just need to start looking at the different kinds of reading that's there, and that's it, we're exposing kids to material that's connected to their passions, their interests, and future professions and careers.
You know, I also appreciate that the state is taking their time. They're not saying we're gonna roll this over in 1 year, like some of the other, you know, programs that have been put out there for education. So I think that's also kind of like a feather in their hat, that they're going to take their time and make sure that this is rolled out correctly,
Right.
hopefully.
And last thing I'll say is I'm glad that Wanda mentioned, and I've said a lot about the high school. We're talking about graduation measures, but Wanda, you're absolutely correct. High school never would have been selected for a planned pilot school if not for the disposition, the foundation, all the work that we've done at the elementary level. We included that in our application to the state, to state ed. Everything that we did in the past, in November, this past month with college career readiness, the week that we had students in kindergarten identifying their strengths, preferences, interests, to prepare them, for this new world that they will encounter. So I'm really just thrilled with that. It's an entire district, and it's thrilling.
It almost seems as the state caught up to Brentwood.
Yes, yes. I didn't want to say that, but it's
But I'm
true.
saying it out loud. The proof is in the pudding. The presentation.
They have.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience for Dr. Leone? Any other questions from our audience at home?
Oh, somebody just wrote correct, I'm not sure, it might have
I
been.
think she was talking about your analysis
Oh,
or your interpretation of the question.
okay, I'm glad.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at our monthly meeting on December, 19th? December 19th, same time, same channel. I need a motion to recess public session and adjourn into executive session at 7:54, I'm sorry, is it 7? Is it 7:54? Yes, 7:54 PM.
Motion.
Motion by Julia Burgos. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Brandon Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, everyone.
Kind of lost some of this. You know,